Where did it all start? Yes, it started when I was 14. I was suffering from immense headaches, and one morning I just became paralyzed from the neck down, and I was rushed to the hospital. The doctor found that I have brain tumors, 3 of them in my head. There was no time, so I was rushed into the operation room, where I was operated on for 10 hours. When I came out of the operation, the first one, they said, first of all, well done, you've survived this. And the second thing is, we're gonna have to do it again. It was a struggle. Like, I didn't want to be who I was in that moment. I didn't want to, I didn't want to live. Was it the fear of death or was it something else? But I think it was actually the fear of being severely disabled. Internally, emotionally, I felt that I'm a burden, that I'm a source of pain to everyone around me. And I wanted to get as far away as possible. So being a nomad in the world, letting everybody think that I'm having the time of my life, seeing the world, that was my way of getting away. Like, it literally had to come to me because I couldn't explore much. So she was next door and she was practicing yoga every day. And I used to find that hilarious. I was thinking that I'm dying, so I was extremely cynical about everything. She would wake up in the morning, she would walk down the mountain with her braided hair and go to her yoga class for like 4 hours. And then she would come back in the afternoon and she would boil a pot of tea and pour a bottle of whiskey into the pot of tea. And I used to find that hilarious. So I lost the bet. And when I lost the bet, she said, okay, so now you have to practice 1 week of yoga with me. So I stayed for another week and another week. Then that teacher, when he found out that I have brain tumors, he was like, whoa, I can't help you with that. You need to go to the big man. And I was like, big man? I thought he was talking about God. And he was like, no, Mr. Iyengar. Iyengar Yoga? And then he pointed out the sign. He was like, you see, Iyengar Yoga? That's what you've been doing. I was really shocked that someone could understand what I'm dealing with internally with so much care and compassion and attention to details. Brain tumor didn't seem to scare anyone. Nobody was frazzled. Iyengar was like, okay, so what's the problem? What's the compromise? 30%? 40% of you is compromised? What about the rest of the 60, 70%? Can we use that for the benefit of that 30% that's struggling? The medical system is fear-driven. He's not fear-driven. And I'm going through a human experience. And 6 years into the process, I went to get an MRI brain scan, and then we saw that the tumor is reduced by 30%, which was a shock. We tend to think that we have everything here, that this operates everything. That the head is what operates the body, but it's not actually that. It's much more magnificent than that. There is so much more we can do for ourselves than we realize, okay? And when we go to a hospital, we're very busy dealing with the disease. What we are there to do, the Iyengar Yoga teachers, the Anu Yoga teachers that come into a hospital to work, they are there to help the patient with the illness. And together we can deal both with the disease and with the illness.
Hi, and welcome to the next edition of Beyond the Bubble. And it's such a privilege to have here a very special guest with an unbelievable story and an incredible life path despite her very young age, which we are going to discover in depth. Before that, as always, we would be more than grateful, and you are more than welcome to put a like and subscribe to our channel. And if you have friends or family and colleagues and others in your network whom you think would be interested in the very diverse topics that we address, please share it with them and send it to them and bring their attention to watching multiple episodes. And with that, we also welcome guest suggestions, and please put comments, questions, your observations under the channel if you are watching this on YouTube. And of course, if you watch this or listen to this on Spotify, you can still reach out to us and we would be more than happy to hear from you. So with that, a warm welcome to Shai, who Well, I will not say more. I'll let you really present yourself and the story, because your story essentially has two parts, because there was one episode in your life that changed everything very early on.
Mm-hmm.
You were 14,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a before and there's an after. So
Correct.
maybe you want to tell
First of
us
all,
what
thank you for
that
having
is.
me, Andras. It's beautiful to be here. Where did it all start? Yes, it started when I was 14. I was suffering from immense headaches and vomiting bouts. I was completely in a dysfunctional state at that point. One morning I just became paralyzed from the neck down, and I was rushed to the hospital. My father just carried me in his hands, and when I reached the hospital, the doctor found that I have brain tumors, 3 of them in my head. Three, and quite big, and my life was in danger. The doctor didn't want to wait for another, not even 15 minutes. There was no time. So I was rushed into the operation room, where I was operated on for 10 hours.
So I pause here for a second.
Please.
So you are 14 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and you were living the life of an average 14-year-old,
Yeah.
give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point you're rushed to the hospital.
Yes.
And within 15 minutes, you're basically told
Rushed.
that you need to be operated on.
Exactly. So I think my father was just like, maybe we should check, like where to take her, where would be the best place.
Right.
And that's when the doctor was like, reality check.
Yeah.
We don't even have minutes, not to mention hours. So
Okay.
it was really
Emergency.
a real emergency. Yeah.
And what happened next?
I came to from the operation, and the doctors, they saved my life.
This was a brain operation.
A brain operation, yeah.
I can't imagine anything more sensitive, difficult, perhaps heart or other, but a brain operation is as serious as it gets.
Yeah, as scary as it gets, as serious as it gets. There's also the fear of what kind of compromise are we going to come out of this operation with.
So they would have to open the skull,
Yeah.
or they had to remove the tumors?
Remove the tumors, yeah. So you want to know what I felt when the doctor came to me and told me that this is what I have and this is what we're going to do?
Okay, how?
I was absolutely relieved. Absolutely relieved. Smiled.
I would assume because at least you knew. Or was it another reason?
What I could hear from what he was saying, there is something we can do about it.
Mm.
And if there's because the suffering, I cannot describe in words, and I don't think that I can even remember how much I suffered, but I really, really suffered. It was really debilitating in every way. I couldn't speak, I couldn't think, I couldn't use my eyes, I couldn't do anything. I was really suffering. And to feel the whole body from the neck down paralyzed is the most scary feeling I've ever had in my life. So when a doctor comes in and says, we can do something about this, I was just relieved.
So there is a solution.
There is a solution.
Can you say more about, so how does a tumor affect the brain? So it appears at some random places, at the inside. I mean, I'm extremely ignorant when it comes to these subjects.
I don't think they know much about why it happens.
Why it happens. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Which was nice, the doctor told me, because I came with all these questions to him, and he was like, well, Shai, we don't know much than you do about the brain. So we don't know enough to answer all the questions, which, I really appreciated him, and I still appreciate my surgeon. It just happens. And then the effects of it is that the brain becomes full of fluids, and there is tremendous pressure inside the skull. And it creates a lot of, because there's a connection between the brain and the gut, the brain-gut syndrome. So whenever there's a really strong pressure in the head, I started just vomiting. So it was really a very rough.
You described this extremely invasive handling of a critical situation, invasive for a positive reason.
Yeah.
So they basically operate on you. They manage to remove the tumors.
Partially.
Okay.
So when I came out of the operation, the first one, they said, first of all, well done, you've survived this. And the second thing is, we're going to have to do it again because we were not able to remove everything.
How did you feel at that point, physically, and when you heard this
Again, I was
news?
so relieved, and there was a reduction in the pressure of in the head, and I could move my body again. I was so grateful.
Weren't you in tremendous pain from the operation?
No. Brain operation is, funnily enough, unlike an abdominal operation, there's less muscles and soft tissue, so there's less movement, so it's actually more stable and it heals faster.
So the brain receptors inside the brain, are there even such brain receptors? So around the skull and the head, certainly, but inside?
So the wound really heals very fast. Inside, you don't feel any pain. Actually, within 48 hours, I was back in school. Children, they recover very, very fast. Secondly, it's a brain operation, not an abdominal, so less movement. Movement doesn't so much affect it. And I think I just wanted to be normal. Of course, everything was not normal, but I wanted to be functioning normally.
But they said they need to operate on you again.
They would have to operate on me again, and I lost about 70% of my vision.
Of your vision?
So
as a result of the operation?
So this is the problem when going into the brain, you never know what kind of damage will be there, and the doctors, with their best, to the best of their capacity not to hurt anything, they have to clear the tumor, and sometimes there is a compromise. There was a new pain in my life to learn how to deal with not seeing well.
Both eyes, or?
Yeah, both eyes.
That was the price of...
That was the price of finding a way out from that very dead-end moment.
And how did, or when was the second operation?
So they started checking me monthly, and then as soon as they saw that the tumor is starting to grow again, which was about, I think, maybe 9 or 10 months later, it was very different. The first one, I was eager to go to the operation. The second one, I was so afraid that I just wanted it to be over. So I was trying to push the schedule to be the fastest possible. My mom was like, "What are you doing? Wait." I was like, "No, right now, let's do it." If I could go in that moment into the operation room, because I was so afraid. The first operation, there was no fear because there was not knowing. The second operation, there was fear. I was a little bit older. And that fear was very deep. That fear was very deep.
Fear of death or fear of pain?
I think it was fear of disability, because I already lost my vision. I was really afraid to be completely blind or lose other capacities that I have. So I was really, really afraid, and I think it was a very deep fear. Again, it's interesting you asked that because I've never differentiated it. Was it the fear of death or was it something else? But I think it was actually the fear of being severely disabled.
Because you go in with the uncertainty that I go in a certain state, which is not far from ideal, but at least you know what it is by that point, right? Like, and then who knows how you come out.
Exactly. And that was a very interesting moment because, I don't know if to say it's interesting, it was a very powerful moment, because what happened is I went into the surgery, but I had a bad reaction to the anesthesia, or it was an expression of that very deep fear. I'm not sure. I don't think the doctors were sure either. But I had nonstop uncontrollable actions in body during the operation while they have my head open, which was extremely dangerous again. It was uncontrolled. I almost died again because they were not able to pause it. Those seizures were so severe and they couldn't pause it. So I have only fragments of moments that I can remember from that experience. Very, very, very fragmented because they were trying to give a lot of tranquilizers to calm down the muscle, to kind of slow down the movement of the body, which was very dangerous in this moment. So I have only very fragmented memory of that.
Do you think that you were not conscious in a medical sense?
Yes.
But certainly what was going on in your body got registered somewhere.
Oh, of course.
So how do you see this, now knowing everything you know about body and mind, how do you think that imprint remained in you? Or is that something that you could process afterwards or somehow deal with it in some way to let go of that trauma to the body?
After the second surgery, I felt like I felt for a few years, I would say until I met Mr. Iyengar. From that moment, from the second surgery till I met Iyengar, I felt like I was in the jungle trying to walk with my machete to clear my path. Yeah,
Everything was a struggle.
everything was a struggle. Everything was a struggle. My own existence, I lost my motivation to live. I tried to commit suicide. It was a struggle. Like, I didn't want to be who I was in that moment. I didn't want to, I didn't want to live.
You didn't have the energy or the motivation to cope even.
I think it's at that point I was almost 16, and it's a very morbid age. And I was dealing with the question of death, not as a theory, but as an actual part of my life. It was a moment of despair, great despair. Yeah.
Did you actually lose other abilities or other capacities after the second operation?
Yeah, I lost more of my vision. But the main thing that happened after the second surgery, when the doctors came into the room after I came to, they said, "Oh my God, you've survived this. Well done. We're so happy, but we're going to have to do it again."
A third one.
Because we were not able to remove the tumor. So then that was a moment where I was sitting on the bed in the intensive care unit, and I was in an isolated room because of the uncontrollable and all the episode that I had just an hour earlier. And it was surreal because I was sitting up on the bed. Suddenly, everything is normal, fine. I'm sitting on the bed. I'm all in bandages, but I'm awake and active. And I'm sitting on the bed, and I had one thought. It's okay to die young. It's okay. There's some people in the world that live 70 years. Some people in the world live 20 years. Some people, everyone has their own destiny. And there was this very calm acceptance that I must be one of those, a realization almost, I'm one of those that dies early. And that's okay. I don't want to argue with that.
Dies as a subject of destiny or dies as...
This is my life story. Some people die young. You look around, you say, oh, in the world, in actual fact, not everybody lives to be 100. Some people live a long life and some people live a short life. I must be one of those with a short life. I don't want to argue with that. I want to accept it. And that was the moment, and it was very calm. It was very quiet. I wasn't making a big deal out of it. I wasn't having a conversation about it later on to inform everybody that this was my decision. It was internal. It was quiet. It was vivid. It was clear to me. I'm not arguing with this anymore. I'll accept my tumor the way it is. I'll accept the destiny of my life story the way it is. And if I am losing my vision, the best thing I can do right now is to go and see as much as I can, because soon I'm not going to be able to see.
All of this sounds very optimistic.
Extremely. Just accepting, not arguing with reality. There's great power. I like to surf, okay? When you try to swim against the waves, you're going to get very tired very soon. And if you just catch a wave, this is going to be a great ride, okay? So it felt a little bit like joining the forces, kind of like, instead of trying to work against it, to try and say, what happens if I just go with it and accept it and be fine with it and be happy? So that was one aspect of the things. And as you said, it sounded very, very optimistic. And I think my very manipulative mind in that moment to say, okay, everybody, this you can accept. Like, this is something that people, as you said, this sounds actually good. So my surroundings was like, yes, of course, she wants to see the world. But I can tell you that internally, emotionally, I felt that I'm a burden, that I'm a source of pain to everyone around me. And I wanted to get as far away as possible from being that burden to people. So being a nomad in the world, letting everybody think that I'm having the time of my life, seeing the world, that was my way of getting away from feeling like a source of pain to everyone in my life.
Did the third operation happen?
No,
It never happened.
never happened.
That meant that after your recovery, well, recovery in the sense of at least release from the hospital.
Yeah.
let's not be too far-fetching there. But after your release from the hospital, did you go back to school, or you said, okay, now I'm going to go see the world?
That's a very interesting point you're touching on. So of course I thought, why do I need certificates from school when I'm dying? Basically. What am I gonna? I used to tell my mom, why are you pressing me to go to school? Would you want me to come to God and say I got my degree? Like, for what? I mean, what am I doing this for? And that was a very, very tough struggle. My mother is a very stubborn person, very positive, very stubborn. And I'm grateful to her today for being so stubborn, because she forced me to deal with my disabilities, to learn different ways of learning that I don't have to rely on my vision. She made sure that I remained very independent and very lively on my own. Even though it meant I had to fight with her, she was very persistent with that. So I did complete my school education.
You could do that in a special school, or?
I wasn't in a special school. It was my mom. Again, my mom is this phenomenal lady. She used to sit and read out to me all the material that I had to study for the exam, and she taught me how to listen and learn rather than write.
You didn't resist her
pressure? I resisted so much, man. I gave her a really hard
Well, you were
time.
a teenager after all. Yeah.
Today, I'm grateful. Back then, I didn't understand why she was pressing so much. She kept me in my school environment. She kept me in a social environment. She did not limit me in what I wanted to do, but just made sure that I have the skills I need in case I do live a longer life. So I think my mom was very zen about it. It wasn't about telling me that I'm going to live. It was about telling me you're alive now.
In the moment.
In the moment. You're alive now. Now you're here. Now you're alive. This is what we're going to focus on.
So not giving you false hopes.
No.
Or anything.
No, but if you are alive now, you're alive fully.
And you got to study and listen to my voice.
You got to go to school. So that was a beautiful, very powerful gesture that my mom made for me, and that will be with me for the rest of my life, because it gave me so many important tools for life.
Essentially,
that are unusual.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
Focus on the now. And I guess that will come back when we talk about your yoga learnings and being in the moment and mindfulness. But before we go there, you finished school.
Yeah.
And you got your backpack, or how did you?
I think left before that. I left around the age of 17, I think. I went to Holland in the beginning. I spent 2 years there. And I met, it's a crazy story. I have crazy stories, but I met a genius, a mathematician. So maths were the only thing that was very, very challenging for my eyes, because if you have a sentence with words, if a word is missing, something is missing in the logic and you can go back. But with numbers, if I'm missing something, I wouldn't know that I missed an X or a minus.
Or a formula or something, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big challenge for me, and I wasn't able to complete the studies without having math. And then I met this genius in Holland, where I lived and studied math with him. He developed a whole method for me to study math. And I must say that in hindsight, I can see how spending those 2 years with this teacher really prepared me for the next learning experience that I've had, because he was very old school, that teacher, that math teacher. And I had to really study with him like 14 hours a day.
14 hours a day?
14 hours a day.
In the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands.
With visual impairment,
With
mathematics.
visual impairment and feeling horrible, by the way. Yeah, I wasn't doing so well physically. I was still suffering from headaches and
What is
I
the
wasn't
reason?
as bad, but
What is the
it's not
reason you
good.
went to the Netherlands in the first place? Was it for just to study with this?
No, I didn't know him then. I went there and then I met him, but I met him early on. It's also a funny story. Why did I go to the Netherlands? I have full of stories. Okay, so when I was 12, my mom took me on a bat mitzvah trip to Europe.
From Israel?
Yeah, and we landed in Paris, and I couldn't stop crying. And she was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, I can't express what's wrong, but I need to get out of here."
From Paris?
From Paris. So we got on the train, we went to Amsterdam.
Okay.
And when we got off the train in Amsterdam, you come out, the sun was shining. There was the guy with the music. He has this music box there at the entrance to the station. And I was just mesmerized by the place, people smiling, looking at each other. I was like, "Mom, I'm going to live here one day." So it was this memory of a child that I really loved the place and I wanted to live there. So I just went because that was the only place in my head that I thought would be a positive place for me. So I went to Amsterdam.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you went to Amsterdam, you were studying with this particular teacher. That was the only thing you did there?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 14 hours a day.
Yeah,
It
it
was
sounds like
intense.
but what is the goal there? So you is it to pass the exams
Yes,
or
and I
truly...
did pass the exam, thanks to his methodology that he created. And it was amazing because it wasn't just a methodology. He wanted to show me that numbers are in everything. Mm-hmm. So we would take walks and we would calculate the angle of the light hitting the ground. We would calculate the speed of the water in the canal. We would go into the casino to learn probability. So he wanted to show me that life is in numbers. Like I can calculate everything in life. So it was a real old school teacher, very demanding. Like for instance, I wasn't allowed to say I don't know. Every time I said I don't know, I had to carry 1 kilo of oranges.
Of what?
Oranges.
Okay.
Okay, because you don't realize how much you say I don't know when you study. So every time I said I don't know, so sometimes I would come back with like 20, 30 kilos of oranges.
Tell me more about this. So
Okay.
you're sitting there,
Yeah.
he's teaching you
Yeah.
equations.
Yeah.
And at one point he says, okay,
He's
what's
asking me-
the result of this? And you say, okay, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Then he said, now you go down to the shop.
No.
No?
He
How does that
collects
work?
it the whole day.
Okay.
He just marks it that I said I don't know. And he collects it the whole day. And at the end of the day, he says, tomorrow you're going to bring 25 kilos of oranges.
From the shop or
from
market?
the shop, but you bring them all at once. You cannot go and come back.
So there was also
And in
physical
the-
education part of it?
And
Okay.
and in the snow to carry it, those bags, when it's
Snow
cold.
in Amsterdam?
Yeah, it was a little bit. Yeah, it was a little snowy sometimes. I was in the winter. It was like cutting through my hands. So, and then it happens again and again. And slowly you notice that I'm like being careful saying I don't know because I don't want to carry it. And then he said, okay, bring apples because we have enough orange juice. Like in the morning, it would make juice for me, right?
Right.
So it wasn't to be mean to me. It was to be,
Sure.
to give me the best lesson of my life. Try to figure it out first. Don't jump with the I don't know, fix it for me. Important lesson, which also was important when I met my next teacher. I had very good teachers in my life.
Do you still have this caution with you not to say I don't know when somebody asks you a challenging question?
I do have it in me not to say I don't know, but to work with it, try to figure things out, and then say, well, I've tried this, maybe you have a new idea, or maybe you can add something to it. So I wouldn't come and say just, I don't know. Of course, randomly I would. It's not that those words are gone, but on more important topics, I wouldn't just dismiss it and say, I don't know. I would first try to figure it out and then show up with a little bit more, a fuller idea of things before I question it.
And some orange juice.
And some oranges.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you this teacher was extremely influential in your life.
Yes.
Not just for the mathematics, but
At that
broader
moment, yes.
learnings.
I
and all
felt
that.
it was a stepping stone towards the next experience, in hindsight.
What was
because
that?
math was not my passion. It wasn't something that I really wanted to do.
Yeah. So what was that next experience?
So first of all, I started moving around the world. I didn't stay in Holland. I started traveling Southeast Asia. Really, I was in many different countries, New Zealand, United States. I was moving, South America. I was moving from place to place because I wanted to see everything, because my life is short, because I'm afraid, because, I'm feeling bad. So every time that I was starting to feel worse physically, for me, internally, it would mean that I have to move faster because the time is running out, kind of a thing. See more, time is running out, move fast.
I just wanted to ask, so you graduated in the end? So did you get your degree or graduated back in Israel?
I did complete the math exam.
The math exam, okay. And then your parents were okay with you, despite your visual impairment and other challenges. They said, okay, you can and should go see the world.
Yes, I had.
Because it gives you satisfaction.
Yes, I had amazing parents, still have my amazing parents. My father passed away when I was 19, but I had an amazing pair of parents who only encouraged me to live a full life and never stopped me, never said no, never tried to control my life in any way.
So there you get your backpack and really see the world. And you could really fly around and hike and hang on in different places. How did that go?
Do you mean financially?
Well, financially is secondary to the conversation. But given your physical, emotional, mental state, how did that globetrotting work out?
So traveling the world sounds very glamorous. You imagine somebody hiking with a backpack on their back and climbing mountains, and I wasn't able to do that. So I could fly, I could walk, but I wasn't able to strain myself. So basically I was sitting in different rooms in different places in the world, trying to avoid being a source of pain to the rest of the people I know in my life. So that was what I was doing. It wasn't, some days I would go and do something very adventurous, but it was some days and I would have to self-medicate to do that. And it was
just to cope.
Just to cope. So it
Were
wasn't like a normal trip somewhere. I was in a lot of pain.
Were you feeling lonely?
Of course, but not worthy.
That's far worse. And how long did this last? So how long were you...
Like this, in this state?
In this kind of, not so much the emotional
Almost
state,
10
but
years.
in terms of moving from place to place.
So, yeah.
How many?
Almost 10 years.
So 10 years you are moving around the world?
Less than 10, yeah.
And living from basically your parents or your mom at the time was
So initially my parents supported me, but also the math teacher taught me how to take what I have and make more of it. So that was
you were working?
No, he taught me how to invest so I could multiply the sum that I had, which was very helpful at that time.
Yeah.
And I was living like a traveler, it wasn't like a heavy budget.
So what would you spend your days with when you were okay in those different places, be that New Zealand or South America or anywhere else?
Meeting people from all around the world, wherever you go, fellow travelers. It wasn't necessarily a theme to the moment. It was whatever I could do. So depends. It really depends.
But was it sports? Was it, reading was not an option?
I cannot read. No, it wasn't much of... there wasn't much going on.
For 10 years?
For almost 10 years, yeah.
Okay.
I was basically kind of lying down somewhere with a nice view.
That's quite a long period to do that. Yeah. And at that time, so you mentioned you were about to meet your next teacher. Yeah. Now, I think there's this, I love this wonderful saying, it touched me so much at a certain point in my life, and it stayed with me, that when the student is ready, the teacher appears?
In 2004 was when I met him for the first time.
You were how old at the time? Or let's say how long after your
So the first operation
operation?
was when I was 14, second operation around 16, 17. So yeah, I moved around about 7 years, 8 years before I reached Mr. Iyengar. Yeah.
So you were in your mid-20s?
Yeah. Early in my 20s, just showed up actually. So what happened is, again, it's another story because it had to happen from life because I wasn't going anywhere. So this actually happened in the guest house.
Which country are we in?
India. I've reached India. And there was a lady living at the room next door to me in the guest house. Like it literally had to come to me because I couldn't explore much. So she was next door and she was practicing yoga every day. And I used to find that hilarious. I was thinking that I'm dying, so I was extremely cynical about everything and very defensive about everything. And she was practicing yoga every day. And in the morning, she would wake up in the morning, she would walk down the mountain with her braided hair and go to her yoga class for like 4 hours, okay? And then she would come back, and I'm sitting there in the room, just watching the whole thing happening. And then she would come back in the afternoon, and she would boil a pot of tea and pour a bottle of whiskey into the pot of tea.
A bottle of whiskey?
A bottle of whiskey.
Okay.
And I used to find that hilarious, because in the morning it's like traveling, and then in the evening and the nights she was like drinking. So I used to think it was funny. So I used to tease her about that.
Then on one side you are the most zen, healthiest, in sync with nature, and the next one is you get
hair, whiskey,
hair
friends
out,
around. I'm like, okay, cool. So I found that funny, and I used to tease her and tease her and tease her. And then there was a party, a drinking party at the guest house, and there was a game, and I had to know the lyrics for a song, and I was certain that I know it, but I didn't. So I lost the bet, and when I lost the bet, she said, okay, so now you have to practice 1 week of yoga with me. And this is how it started. And luckily, it was Iyengar Yoga.
So Iyengar Yoga, okay. So tell, which city was this, or which part of India?
This was in the Himalaya mountains. It was in a village.
I see.
Yeah.
So there you are. You lost the bet.
Yeah.
And the next morning, you were meant to wake up and do 4 hours of yoga, or
and I was cursing the day that I joined in this game, and I was like, "Oh man, what did I do?" But I didn't. The only thing I had left was my word in life, so I didn't want to back out from my word. So I said, "I promised, I'll go." I went. The first day, I was teasing her. The second day, I was still teasing her. And on the third day, I realized that if I continue teasing her and making jokes about it, the joke is on me. Because something from that very dark, black background that I came from, how I felt physically, emotionally, mentally, there was a light dot a white dot on a black surface stands out. And something stood out. I didn't know what it was, but something stood out. And I thought to myself, if I could make today better, it's a lot. If I can have some say in my quality of life, maybe I could see more of the world, maybe I could experience more, maybe something like that. I thought it would make the time. I knew I have a slow-growing brain tumor. I knew it's going to take years of agony, and I thought maybe I can make my everyday life a little bit better. So this was the incentive for me after the third day, and I stopped laughing about it. And I stayed for another week with that teacher.
Were you in physical pain from all the yoga poses?
I didn't think about that. I only felt, how come it makes me, I didn't understand. I was fascinated with how it makes me feel better. How come I walk in feeling one thing and coming out feeling another? That I didn't compute to me. And I've been doing physical activity as a child. I was racing and athletics, so I had my experience with physical activity. I was surfing. This was different. This was a different feeling, and felt like something I could explore more and maybe have a better quality of life. So I stayed for another week and another week. And then that teacher was like, when he found out that I have brain tumors, he was like, whoa, I can't help you with that. I'm just a simple, regular teacher.
I'm just a regular guru.
I'm just a regular teacher for tourists, coming into this village. You need to go to the big man. And I was like, big man? Like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what the name of the method. I didn't know anything. I was like there for a couple of weeks, and I didn't have any prior interest in yoga.
Yeah, I know that.
So he said the big man. I thought he was talking about God, and I was like, but wait, now I need to practice. And he was like, no, Mr. Iyengar. And I said, who is he? And he said, it's a real man. Iyengar Yoga. And then he pointed out the sign. He was like, you see, Iyengar Yoga, that's what you've been doing. I was like, oh, I didn't realize, because I don't even look to see, because I can't read. Yoga, whatever. Yeah. And he was like, no, it's... And then he said, the book with the pictures, and it's black and white pictures and light on yoga is... I said, is he alive? Because I really thought I'm seeing something that's from a different era. And he was like, yeah, very much alive and kicking. Like, you have to go and see him. And then he made sure that I will be accepted at the Iyengar Institute. So I went from the Himalaya downtown to Pune in central India, not far from Mumbai.
I'll pause here for a second. So can you tell a little more about why this particular branch or style or approach of yoga, what describes it? What does it, what are the characteristics of it compared to other types or styles of yoga?
So I'm not going to compare. Yeah, I'm going to say what are the advantages, and I can talk about the advantages of Iyengar Yoga for another 2 hours. So I'm going to choose like 3 for you. Okay. So one would be the use of props, which is extremely important for rehabilitation processes, because you want to make sure you get the action in the right place and not compromise another area of the body that is struggling, right?
And prop would be, what is it called, cords or?
So props is a very wide range. In Pune, when you show up, you have prop rooms, you have all the back of the room. It's like a semicircle room. The whole back of the room is full of wooden props. So there is many different kinds of, we have soft props, hard props, structures, that we use a lot, and also wall ropes, as you mentioned. So you have all of that to help us make sure that we bring about harmonious processes. Because if there's one thing that someone that needs rehabilitation has gone enough through, is the disharmony. Okay? And to regain a sense of harmony in the physical body-mind experience is extremely important. So with the help of props, we can make sure that the action that we bring about in a student is accurate and the right action we are wishing for.
Appropriate,
yeah.
So accurate is where it needs to be, and appropriate, that it's the right thing.
It allows me to tailor sometimes the pose or the sequence to a patient or a student. We call them students, we don't have patients.
Right.
Okay, so just for the sake of clarity, we'll call it patient-student.
Okay. So that was one.
That was one. The second thing would be, I have to choose, the art of sequencing. Okay, so that to say which pose comes after which pose in order to create a wished change of critical mass to transform this condition. Okay, so I'll just give you a very, very, very visual example. Okay, let's say I am tending to stand like this. How much do I have to develop the muscles here in order to be able to stand upright? Okay, so I could build a sequence of asanas, of poses, that would address that area in a specific way from all directions in order to make sure that we bring back the balance into the body. Okay, so that's a very visual, trying to give you a gauge into how we would use the sequence in order to build.
It's almost engineering, where you create a workflow of sorts.
It has all forms of, I really find that yoga has all forms of discipline in it. It has all the knowledge, I feel, universal knowledge about the world. And engineers can only create what they are inside. You know, how did we build buildings? It's a model of our own system. So we can only build what we are already aware of inside, right? We can only manifest what we are.
And ultimately, the root cause of it is the laws of nature, and you need to be
so you will
in
find
synchronicity
engineering,
with
you will
that.
find art, you will find science, you will find everything in yoga. Really, it's like this incredible source of knowledge for human beings.
So that was number 2.
Yeah, and the third one, so there's, of course, the accurate execution of a pose. Everything is very, like, we know how to bring about a measurable result, and we know how to explain it. So the accuracy and the protocols that we know how to create, even if it's a tailor-made protocol for a specific patient with specific needs, it would still be something we can trace back and explain. So that's one thing. And another thing I have to give to one more is the timing. In medicine, they use dosages of a medicine for a specific effect. So you could take the same medicine, and in one dosage, it operates on the brain, and another dosage, it operates on the intestine. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the same way, we use sometimes timing and poses. If I want to reach a specific action in the body, skeletal body, it would be maybe a different timing. Whether if I want it to be reaching maybe a different system, a different mechanism in the body, I would use a different time dosage, I would call it.
I think that makes perfect sense. Where it's a little, take it to a different domain, is when you have a certain experience, well, life experience or an encounter with a person at one point in your life versus another point in your life can have a radically different impact on you, right? So the timing, it's not so much the
you're
sequencing,
talking about
but
the timing in life, and I'm talking about how much time am I going to stay in this pose? 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Okay, duration.
Duration.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was akin to
Forgive my English.
at which point in your rehabilitation or the...
Also, it's both. It would be, when would be the right moment to introduce a specific pose to a specific condition or student in a condition, or we could use the duration of the time in a pose in order to bring about a different effect.
And in terms of dosage, like you said, it's a medical term. But in terms of duration, or how long do I say hold a pose or do a pose?
So it's either hold or held, because we
Okay.
have props, right? So
Okay. I'm being held by the prop?
Yes. So let's say what you need is a pose that you cannot do, but you need it for 5 minutes, ideally. Okay. Iyengar, with his compassion and his incredible hope that he wanted to give anyone in any condition, he created the prop. So I could put you in a pose where even if you can't do it, you could stay in it for 5 minutes comfortably to gain the benefit. So, let's say you have a dog pose, right? Everybody knows the dog pose because...
The downward dog, yeah.
The downward dog, yeah. So Adho Mukha Svanasana is the name of the pose.
Good luck for our transcribers who put the subtitles. Okay, we'll ask you for the word for that.
So normally you do it independently in the middle of the room. Yeah, you just, we will put pictures. And then with what Iyengar did is he can put you in a rope. So when you're hanging from the rope, you don't have to, you're held in the pose. You don't have to hold something that your body cannot handle, but you're being held and then using something very, very important, which is the intelligence of your body. Okay? So we tend to think that we have everything here, that this operates everything. That the head is what operates the body, but it's not actually that. It's much more magnificent than that. Each cell of our body, each pore of your skin has the same seed of your whole intelligence, of your whole life, of your whole capacity. Each cell. Yet we are so focused, or have been focused in the past couple of centuries, building up only the brain, where in actual fact you have so much more to discover. There is a cellular memory. We have memory in our body. So we can use that right? So for me, when I look around, or after that experience of being so fortunate to have this experience to be with Mr. Iyengar, I look at the world and I think, my gosh, we know more about our cell phones than we know about our own bodies. We don't know what majestic machine we are walking around with. We don't understand the options. We don't understand the features. We disrespect it sometimes. We overlook it often. But it's constantly communicating with us, giving us information and never failing us. Always, the body always wants to be better. So if you just give it the right surroundings, circumstances, respect, listen to it, you would be quite surprised at what could happen. And the deeper you go into it, the more profound and surprising it becomes. It's really
and helpful,
very helpful and freeing. For me, it was about independence. I gained my independence. So when I'm in pain at night, there's no mother, there's no boyfriend, there's no doctor, there's no nurse. It's me with my own personal hell. And if I can have something that I can do myself to free myself from this pain right now.
Without chemicals?
Without nothing, with just understanding how it works. That's all I wanted, personally. For me, it was give me the freedom.
So now we have, at least I do, and hopefully others listening, watching this, have a slightly better understanding of the approach. And is this particular, I want to use the right word, is it a branch of yoga? Is it a method? Is it school of yoga?
I would like the idea of a branch of yoga. Each one of them is different. I have never practiced any other form of yoga, so it will be very difficult for me to make any comments about it. I only know Iyengar Yoga and its benefits. I do know, power like any power in the world, like fire. You could burn down the house or you could cook dinner. So I think it's important to know how to use this fire. And I think it's important for people out there to check what's the lineage behind the knowledge that you're receiving, because yoga is an ancient knowledge, ancient form of knowledge, which was passed from teacher to student, and the lineage is very important. So if you cannot trace back the lineage, it's most likely not yoga, because it's very popular these days, and people don't really know. Any person, holding a bowl, gong, and say, I'm practicing yoga, and no one can really debate that.
What I was going to ask about this is that specifically geared towards physical rehabilitation, or so what is the underlying, not approach, underlying direction it's heading towards? Is it yoga as in
yoga is
body,
yoga.
Body,
is
mind,
100%,
and spirit harmony? That's ultimately the common concept in all yoga practices. I'm just wondering that in this particular, well, if you say branch is the right word, in this particular branch,
it would be the right,
or school, is it really geared towards those who are healing, who need rehabilitation of sorts?
First of all, yoga on its own is a solace. It's a solace for us in ourselves. So for me to say yoga is therapy or yoga is rehabilitation, it's almost like saying therapy. It's part of it anyway. It's like you saying, I'm going to a psychologist that does psychology. And yoga is the knowledge of the human organism and the human experience. And so whether you went there for health or not, you're going to get it. You know what I mean? Like, you are going to get the benefits of yoga, of the practice of yoga. When you go to Iyengar Yoga, you get something very accurate, responsible, reliable, measurable. Okay? So when you go into the medical system, and you do want to be there to help people in need, if you have some solutions, it's connecting to the medical system seamlessly. And I appreciate the fact that the medical system doesn't jump on this, because it's so unclear what is this, right? It's very confusing. So I think it's very important to have clear facts before we give it to people in all kinds of conditions. And what exactly are we administrating to other people?
Yeah. I want to come back to this.
Please.
To understand better what conditions it can help. And we could say any condition for that matter. But again, give very specific examples of the kind of students, patients, or others you've worked with. But before we get there, tell me more about that time. So you land there in Pune, India, and meet the teacher.
Yeah.
How did that go?
So when I reached Pune, it was a big moment. Actually, when I walked in, there was nobody there, the first moment. So I went up to the hall, even though today I know in hindsight it's not allowed to go in when it's closed. But I walked in and I had a moment to look around me. And I thought to myself, what is this place? It felt so different than anything I've ever seen before. And then later on, the person that received me on that day in the afternoon was Gita S. Iyengar, who was the daughter of Mr. Bika S. Iyengar. And she went through my medical reports. And she had me in an interview with her personally. She went through my case and she looked at me and she said, I don't know if they told you or not, the doctors, but you have a hormonal problem. And I was like, come on. I have a brain tumor. It's not enough. Like, I don't have a hormonal problem. She said, you have a hormonal problem. Maybe they didn't tell you. Maybe they don't know, but you have it. And I was leaving the room going like, what is she talking about? Like, I don't have a hormonal problem. I do have a hormonal problem. Yeah. So my thyroid is dysfunctional. That was my first experience with the Iyengars. My first experience with the Iyengar was trust, confidence in knowledge, knowing, not guessing. She knows. It doesn't matter if it's on the report or no. She knows what she's seeing.
And how does she know?
She knew. She had the most all-prevailing truth-seeing eyes that I've ever come across.
So it's more of a spiritual knowledge than a...
She was, I don't want to guess what it was, but she was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are signs to different conditions, so you do develop the eye to see things with time, but I think the level of certainty, confidence, understanding, real understanding of knowledge was beyond anything I've ever seen anywhere, or until today too.
Yeah, I know someone like that, and someone with a knowledge which goes even way beyond intuition. It's in the spiritual realm, who understands things on such a level. And it's true. It's not guesswork. It's knowledge, and it sounds like this is the kind of experience you had. So she sees stuff that others don't, and then what?
What she sees, she's very confident, and there's knowledge there. So I think it was building the first moment of trust. That she knows what she's talking about. She knows what she's seeing, and she's actually looking at me. She's actually seeing me. Which was a very strong way of starting for me. That's why I took a moment to share this story with you, because it was like that before I even knew anything.
How are you feeling at this point? Because at this point you will have done a couple of weeks or months of yoga?
Clueless. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know if I did something crazy to join this place. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know that Iyengar was a big name. I went there because that teacher told me to go.
But in terms of physical, did your physical, general condition was better as a result of some yoga?
No,
not yet.
No,
not yet.
I was in dire state. I was malnutrition, vomiting bouts, headaches, not sleeping at night. Yeah, and she was very concerned with all of that, Gita Ji. She was concerned with what I eat every day. She was concerned that we cannot build a rehabilitation process without flesh to hold the spine. I was in a very deprived and full of fear that I didn't realize I was holding on to. because I was you remember, in the jungle with my machete trying to clear my path, didn't really stop to reflect or wonder or analyze too much what I was going through. And there, with the practice, with the level of accuracy that Gitaji was building the sequence for me with, so she built a sequence for me, and now I have to practice it every day in the therapy class with assistants. Okay, so there's Guruji, BKS Iyengar, and Gitaji in the room, and they have like dozens of assistants from all over the world and from India, studying under them and helping them to work with the patient students.
Why did you go there? Why did you go there? Was it the hope of healing? Was it curiosity? Or was it, I could go elsewhere, so why don't I just go here? Since I was told by that yoga instructor up the mountain.
Okay, so I'll take you back for a moment. So when I left to go travel the world, I've decided to say yes to everything.
Clock was ticking.
I want to see, clock is ticking. I need to say yes to everything. I cannot start saying I don't do this, I don't do that. Yeah, I've said yes to everything life has to offer. Luckily, it was only positive things that were offered to me. Okay, so this was one of them. The teacher said you need to go there. I'll just go there, without thinking. And I think because for me, mentally, emotionally, I was walking towards my death, there was no fear. I had to overcome my fear of death. So I've decided to say to death, two can play this game. You don't only get to chase me, I can also chase you. This was my way of thinking at that time. And that's why I said yes to everything, because in a way, I was a little bit chasing death, which means being alive, I think.
So that's what landed you there.
I just went, and to be very clear, at no point did I think it's going to be a healing thing. I thought it maybe make today a little bit better, but under no circumstances did I have for a fleeting moment, that thought in my head. Also because Iyengar, one of the first interactions I've had with him, told me, don't expect me to make it go away. Of course not.
We're on the same page here.
We're on the same page. I'm not expecting that at all. And he was like, don't expect that. And I was like, okay. Not expecting that at all.
I really love this attitude where, and also Garth, who we had earlier, he looked at this, the lack of expectations, or letting go of the expectations as a very positive thing. Now, you didn't consciously let go of expectations because you never had any in the first place. So that's probably a good place to start, because you will only be positively surprised, if at all, if it does bring you some positive aspects or some benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
So you go there in this semi-neutral, somewhat curious, but not too ambitious attitude.
Not ambitious at all, yeah.
And you start a process, right? Okay, so what did that process look like? And I also ask it because obviously we'll be very interested as we get closer to the present, because you are working now with hospitals and you created a whole impressive project around it. So as you explain your activities at the time, I think it's interesting to blend that with what does that look like for a patient, client today.
So I'll start with my first impression as a patient in the Iyengar Institute, in that hall, with that sequence that Gitaji prepared specially for me. I was really shocked that someone could understand what I'm dealing with internally with so much care and compassion and attention to details, to the last nail until it's right for me, which I have not experienced before. So having someone understand my internal experience, my headache, and what will cause the headache, I was speechless for the first year. I think I was just shocked at the fact that they have this understanding of how to make it pause. There's a simple enough actions that I can perform myself. If I do them with that specific understanding, it will pause my headache. That was shocking for me, that it was even possible, that I had even control over that there was place for negotiation, because it felt like quite a final cut kind of a feeling, yeah?
That you have a control over your body.
That I have a say in this.
Was saying this.
I'm a participant. It's not done to me. I have something to add to this and maybe make it a little bit better right now. Just that. Just make it a little bit better right now. Make it stop. She met me for 10 minutes in a room, and she knew what I needed to do for 2 hours to make this stop. For instance, I'll give you an example. I cannot lie down flat on my back because my head is crooked because of the operation. So when I lie down, my head drops because it's not perfectly round. They even thought of that. Without me saying anything, without you seeing anything on my head. So to have the feeling that somebody understands my pain, my suffering, without even asking me sometimes.
Just in and by itself has tremendous value.
So shocking. And another thing that was huge for me, with regards to what happened there on the emotional side, was the fact that a brain tumor didn't seem to scare anyone. Nobody was frazzled. Iyengar was like, okay, so what's the problem? What's the compromise? 30%? 40% of you is compromised? What about the rest of the 60, 70%? Can we use that for the benefit of that 30% that's struggling? I remind you, I wanted to kill myself and I thought I wasn't worthy to live because I was bringing only pain to people because of my condition. And suddenly there is somebody standing in front of me saying, it's not such a big deal. Let's deal with it.
This can go both ways. It can go in the right way, which you experienced, where they didn't minimize what you went through.
No.
They didn't make you feel that, hey, this is negligible.
Defines all of me. It doesn't define all of me.
But
I
exactly,
have strengths.
that's the other side of it,
Yes.
where you say, let's put that in perspective.
Yes.
And you're not 100% compromised, or to use your word, you're not dead. You have a lot of your body which is working as it should, and let's capitalize on that. Let's use that for the good of the rest. So that was extremely compassionate and empathetic, and not just saying, hey, the hell that you had been through is not a big deal. That's absolutely not what they were saying.
The medical system is fear-driven. He's not fear-driven. And I'm going through a human experience. Human experience can be a ski accident. It doesn't have to be a brain tumor. It could be a ski accident that could compromise completely, change completely your life. Not you, anyone else. It's about the human experience. It's not about the definition of a condition, which would be what I would answer you. If you ask me which conditions I work with, I would say humans, not conditions. So if a human being can be interactive with me, we can work. And sometimes the percentage is not what I had. I was very lucky. I was very, very lucky for the doctors that saved my life the way they did, for reaching Mr. BKS Iyengar, for having the capacity to travel and reach there, and to have still that 60, 70% to work with. Sometimes the percentage is the other way around. All we have is 30%, and still we can bring about such a huge, huge change. So the whole perspective for me changed completely, and I think that it's very important to remember that it's not just a condition that defines the whole reality. There is, it always has more components, and then there's much more we can do with it. Yeah, so it's not about right and wrong. It would be right I think in any case, to look realistically at the compromise and see what we can positively improve. Without being God and having to say, he didn't come to me and say, oh, we'll cure that, no problem. No, he said, I cannot cure this. But let's see what we can do. Maybe we can improve the quality of life. Maybe we can, he's not playing God. He's giving the right circumstances for the body to have the right process, to give an opportunity. And if it's possible, it will happen. If there's any pathway, the body knows how to jump on it. It just knows how to do it and go for it and bring back the life.
And others you were there with, how did they land there? They came for similar reasons like you? Well, it's probably not the right way of putting it because you did not come there or go there to actually heal. You went there because of all the reasons you mentioned. But did others land there because they wanted to learn this particular method or they actually went there with a certain amount of expectations or at least hope that their particular condition can improve?
Okay, so as you've asked before, it wasn't just for therapy. There were also general classes, advanced classes, teachers' classes. Yeah, there is everything. And there is one therapy class, in order to also be compassionate with the knowledge and capabilities we have and give it to people in moments of need,
By teacher classes, you mean teaching the teachers or the future teachers?
Yes, so only after I got there, I realized that there is in some cases, 7-year waiting list to get into this center. And people would come from all around the world, teachers, Iyengar Yoga teachers, to study from the source.
But you were not aiming to be a teacher at that point,
at all.
Right? That came much later.
Much later. Not at all. I had no aspirations. And my journey was, each one has their own journey. My father used to say, the number of people equals the number of ways. So it will never be the same path. So people come in, and yes, a lot of people came there for spirituality, for self-realization. Some came for the therapy class, came for health. Iyengar had a beautiful saying that I really liked. He used to say, it doesn't matter why you came, it matters why you stayed. So even if I showed up with some ideas in my head about what it's supposed to be, what matters is what I actually stayed for.
You can discuss why your destiny led you there, but you went there for not overly dramatic reasons, but you stayed for something much more profound.
I received much more than I thought I would be able to get there.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about... so you stayed there several years in the end. Yeah. How did that improve your condition, both physically and certainly you went through quite a deep transformation emotionally, spiritually. But first, tell me a little bit about the physical part.
Okay, so it all started from the physical for me. And because it was the biggest obstacle, you have to first remove that obstacle in order to even have a practice. So it was all about mitigating the symptoms. And as I said, building a sequence that's so sensitive to what is happening to me. And doing that regularly, repeatedly the same. As I said before, for critical mass change, you need to sometimes repeat to create a new habit, to cultivate a new habit in the body, a new inertia. So I repeated it like regularly when every few months they would add in some progression in the sequence. So it was very gradual and organic pace of progress, which respected the way the body recovers, okay, and how the body builds pathways. Within 3 years, I didn't have any more symptoms. Okay, I can say even after the first year, there was a massive improvement because I could eat and I became a little bit stronger. So things were very gradual. When I could sleep at night, oh my God, that was a huge one. But it took time. So I would say it took about 3 years of practicing every day to eliminate symptoms from my life. Okay?
First, stop the bleeding.
Exactly. So it eliminated completely almost completely the symptoms. And then one would think, okay, she's doing really well for herself. Iyengar was not about bringing me to a state of like, oh, it's okay now. He was into bringing the patients into a complete transformative state. That means that you become hyper-functional, not just okay, not managing, but thriving. So yoga has the whole range, and especially Iyengar Yoga knows how to build up the range to take you from passive-passive to passive-active to active-passive to active-active.
Can you define that? Because especially the middle two. I mean, passive I get, active I kind of get. But what's a passive active and active passive?
So again, we have the props, we have the timings, we have everything at our hands to build a process that will be of harmony. You cannot take person from passive to active. You have to take them to semi-active, yeah, where the passivity is still integral, and slowly bring him to where the activity is what's more dominant, and
are we talking
to completely independent, which is what happened to me.
Are we talking how functional you are in your everyday life, or is it the way your body organically works?
So it starts in the yoga room, and then it translates into your life. Whatever you can, and I think Garth also mentioned it, like whenever you can have a breakthrough within the practice hall is also usually where it's going to be carried forward into your life. Because if you can face yourself in a certain way and create a new pathway in the brain and the body, because when you adapt and you create new habits, you're actually working with the endless plasticity of the brain, which is phenomenal and so interesting. And for me, it was profoundly important. So I really invested my whole being in giving it a real chance. I said, I've made it all the way here. Mr. Iyengar was 88 when I met him. I'm asking this 88-year-old man to help me. I'm going to do my ever-level best not to fail him, to at least have equal efforts. Now, you should have met the Mr. Iyengar. When he made an effort, it was all in. It was like him and Gitaji were, I get a little welled up. They really took me in, and they really made sure that every aspect of my life is taken care of and that I thrive fully, which is not a given. I'm just somebody that walked in from the street like anybody else. So that was devotion, and that taught me devotion, what it means. And how much
you were a good student.
I was, yeah. I was making my efforts to be the best students I could be in my capacity, because his capacity and Gitaji's capacity were somewhere that I still feel I haven't reached and maybe will never reach. Their capacity was very high, so I was always doing my very best. My very best. Yeah.
How long did you stay there? What was the point where you said, perhaps I should teach this?
Just to complete the answer from before. So 3 years, I was feeling that the symptoms were sort of eliminated. And 6 years into the process, okay, I went to get an MRI brain scan, and then we saw that the tumors reduced by 30%, which was a shock, a complete and utter shock for me. And thank God my friend was with me in the room when this was told to me, because I could not believe what I was hearing. I was like, no. So in a way, it was a very funny moment, because physically and my life, I was feeling amazing. I was feeling healthy. But to be able to see it on an MRI brain scan is something I wasn't expecting. So suddenly I was just amazed, because I didn't expect these fruits to land in my hands at all. it was a big transition for me to understand it all, to perceive what happened.
That this is not a subjective
Yes.
experience,
Yeah,
but actually it's objectively proven that everything, the practices and all of that has had a tangible, physically measurable benefit.
That I did not expect. Yeah, and I don't know if it randomly happens in medical science. So it was a shock. And I went to my teacher, Iyengar, and my mom wrote him a letter immediately. And in that letter she wrote, "I delivered her, but you gave her life." And this was a very big moment, I think, for him and I in that moment. And that was also the moment where he looked at me and he was like, "Now it's your turn. It's your turn to give others." And this is when I started teaching.
How did that start or take off? So you were still in India, and I guess you said, okay, I know this, I've been doing it, I understand it's immense benefits, but to be a teacher, I guess it's yet another level. And again, you're not there to open a yoga studio in the end. You're looking at the healing benefits. And as we will see, and I keep emphasizing that aspect, that this is not an esoteric way of expecting miracles.
No.
You're actually working with healthcare facilities and hospitals in conjunction with their medical treatments.
Yes.
It's not that, hey, I completely want to abandon allopathy, classic medicine, or all the rest. This is really working in tandem with Western medicine, for lack of a better term, with the immense benefits of rehabilitation and the healing aspect. So I think I get the impression that it really helps and brings out those benefits when it's really done together in a coordinated way.
Correct, very correct. So first of all, I always mention that and I emphasize that. If the surgeon wouldn't treat me, I would have never met Mr. Iyengar. Never.
Meaning you
I
would
have
be...
been dead. If the operations wouldn't have happened, I would have been dead, for sure. 100% not able to walk, or nothing, okay? So for me, it was the combination of the two. But I had to really struggle till I came across this seemingly so simple solution that is actually in me. So you know, when they tell you, you know all the answers, you have all the solutions. It's true. It's true. We do have a lot of the solutions and the answers within us. We just don't take the time to learn how to communicate or to coordinate with this incredible body that we receive. And in actual fact, when you were saying that, I was smiling because when Iyengar told me to go and teach, I was then at the institute for 6 or 7 years, okay, studying, and I felt that I don't know anything. I was like, teaching? What do I know? I only know what I have done. And people are, you know, it's not, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anything about yoga. I genuinely didn't think I could teach. So from the moment he told me to go and teach and to go back to Israel, which is another important point, it took me about 2 years to leave. To really not live anymore in India and live in another country and build myself as a professional yoga teacher. That took about 2 years. I kept going back and forth. I could not, first of all, I didn't want to miss a day learning with him and with Gitaji. I just wanted to be there. Because he was the wisest man I've ever met in my life. And he looked at me and said, you can teach. So if he says it, I don't argue, but I started questioning myself. And he started training me as a teacher, personally training me.
And were you looking at this when it really clicked in you that, okay, Now I'm no longer doing it for myself only, but I'm going to be passing on that knowledge. But were you looking at it in a way that I'm going to have a handful of people who come to learn this from me, or this is going to go into a more systematized way of spreading this particular method and its health benefits?
So similar to the way I went through my path of discovery with yoga, with Iyengar Yoga, I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was about to do. I was resisting being a teacher, so no, I wouldn't even imagine building something institutionalized. I wasn't even willing to teach one-on-one. I thought I didn't know anything. So when I started, Iyengar had me teach only one-on-one classes, and he was guiding me through each class that I was teaching, okay? And he would review it with me. Within a year of starting to do that, okay, I receive a phone call from a rehabilitation facility in Israel asking me to come and build the first rehabilitation yoga department in Israel.
How did that happen?
Exactly. Exactly was my question. I was like, what?
Okay.
Apparently, there was like a convention of the Ministry of Health, and somebody talked about a private case that I had who was a doctor who had a very obscure disease that attacked his nervous system. And within a year, he was walking freely without a cane and going on trips in South America. So it became like a thing, and everybody was talking about it. And then head nurse of that hospital heard about it, and they just called me. It was just because of one case that was a doctor. He's now on our board too. Like he's still a part of our that doctor.
I want to highlight maybe one interesting aspect of this, because I'm absolutely sure many people would listen to this and be very skeptical and say, well, you know,
I was skeptical.
Right? Like
Yeah.
miracles may happen, but they don't necessarily do.
Yeah.
Yet there was a doctor who was a doctor, and not just a random person who posted a story on the internet. And here you are with your fully explained story with this. And again, this is not to extrapolate that every single time the same magic happens, but it's still, there is science to it. There are factors, there are ways that this physical, physiological, and ultimately emotional benefits will happen.
Yeah. So specifically this doctor, it was an interesting case because he was he is still a very renowned doctor in Israel. And because of that, I think all of his colleagues, they were trying to treat him, and they over-treated him, right, with medications. So his kidneys almost shut down. So he was actually not able to receive any more medical care. And this is when I came into the picture. Okay? So when there was no possibility of receiving any more medications is when there was need for different solutions.
To the degree those exist. And that's where you came in.
Yeah.
And this particular method saying they do give it a shot.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that this happened in Israel, where the startup nation and the openness to experiment with this particular approach from a hospital. So again, this is not about someone being so desperate in their life or not seeing any other path than trying this, but again, from a healthcare facility, recognizing that maybe we give it a try and see what it gives.
So I think, in specific, Israel is a very unique place because one of the major values that we hold very dearly in Israel is pioneering. Pioneering is considered a very high value. So when somebody comes up with a new idea or a new methodology, everybody's very open and keen and knows also how to slowly integrate it. Okay, we know how to go through having pioneering new ideas.
It's interesting.
We know what it takes.
Interesting you use the word pioneering, because I first might have, or actually I was expecting you to say something innovation, but I think innovation is a bit less. Innovation is inherently new and discovery, but pioneering has that drive in it. That is not only we try to invent the next big thing, which all developed countries around the world are doing, and even the less developed are trying to do, but the pioneering, it's a mindset
Yeah.
where you say, well, it may not work out, and it
Yeah.
may not bring the results we expect it to bring, but let's give it a shot and see where it goes.
Yeah. So this was something very important that happened in Israel, was that open door for pioneering ideas. And I think pioneering also shows up with, as you said, with a lot of conviction and a lot of a mindset, but also not afraid to walk an unpaved path, yeah, and to discover new things. And I think that often we limit ourselves, and in Israel there isn't that limitation when it comes to those things. It's very open and very sky's the limit kind of an atmosphere.
Also entrepreneurial,
Yes.
which is not something you
Yes.
would often associate with hospitals.
It's true.
You might with
technology,
yeah. Or say pharmaceutical or
Yeah.
other innovative medical device, for instance. But
hospital care, yeah,
and hospital care
Yeah, it's true.
is typically it's essentially about patient safety
Yes.
and patient outcomes, which again is very process driven and constrained often. But again, you say it's innovation. So this hospital gives you a call and you are in India?
No, I was in Israel.
You were back home.
They call me in. I show up, accept all the information they give me. I say thank you. Get on a plane to India, go to Mr. Iyengar, place it in front of him, and then I was doing this. Who do you want me to call for this? And he was like, no. You're doing this. And I said, me? I don't know if I can teach for the past year. You want me to do a hospital? Like, what do I know about working in a hospital? And he was like, no, only you. I'll be with you, don't worry. He was like, I'm with you, but you have to do it. Now, you have to understand, I don't argue with him. When he says something, when he knows, I had a 10-year relationship with this man, okay? He was 10 years in my life. He never had one word that was excess or unnecessary in our dialogues. Not one word. Not one. In 10 years. Just so you understand the level of sharpness of this guy. And I met him every day, all day. Okay? So.
What is the it? When you say you do it. So what is the it that the hospital expected?
So they want me to take care of patients. So they want me to come and treat patients with yoga, with Iyengar Yoga.
Hang on. Here's a hospital that says we have a certain cohort of patients that we'd like to direct into yoga classes, into yoga sessions in order to
enhance their rehabilitation process
and improve their quality of life.
Exactly.
And these patients are of what
All
condition or
departments.
profile or
Okay.
anything? What is it? From bone fracture all the way to neurological diseases and cancer, like everything?
Everything. Really everything. In a rehabilitation facility, you have all different kinds of departments, all different kinds of ages, diseases, accidents, shootings, everything. You have in a rehabilitation facility, you really come across a lot of different cases. The variety is very big.
But again, say a physical accident or something that really affects the functionality of the body is quite different from neurological diseases or long-term, let's say diabetes for that matter, or any other, let's say, internal or organ failures and all the rest.
So more often than not, it's actually complex cases which have more than one issue. Usually, it's not usually just a broken leg. It's usually there's a history for a patient, even if it's just an accident. Or an accident can also be very influential on internal organs. And, we've had all the different scopes of different accidents, diseases. But what I do want to mention is that when I came in, I thought, okay, I'm new. They don't know who I am. They don't know what I do. They're going to give me all the easy cases, like broken arm, broken leg, and then we'll see how we go from there. Where in fact, in reality, when I showed up at the hospital, it was the opposite. They wheeled in only the cases that they felt they came to a dead end with.
The hopeless cases.
The hopeless cases.
Or at least hopeless in the sense that they gave up
They've
hope.
done everything they could, and they don't know how to help this patient anymore.
So why not give a try of something else?
Yeah. So I'm receiving, on my end, cases that are in far worse condition than I was when I came to yoga. When I'm talking to you about a patient on life support, or a patient with 5 autoimmune disorders, or like crazy cases that come from going through hospitals, trying to find solutions, getting to the rehabilitation facility because they're just trying to help them functional life.
Keep them alive.
Keep them functional in life as much as possible. Keep them alive with the life support machine. But yeah, so I was receiving these cases, okay? And one of those cases was a young girl, and that was one of the early on cases I've received. I was on my own with Mr. Iyengar in my background, but physically in the room alone.
Did he ever come to India? Israel?
He came to Israel in 96, I think, or in 97.
But it was way before.
Way before. I mean,
Again.
In 96, I had the first operation, just to give you a...
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that he never came to Israel to support you there.
No.
Okay,
No.
He was your remote...
Yeah, he was already...
Remote backup.
Yeah, he was my on-call backup. And I shared all the cases with him with pictures and sequences. And he knew exactly what was happening in the room. But when they bring in a girl, 19-year-old, and they actually took me to her bed, the medical team took me to her bed. I see a young girl, she's 19, on life support, but can move and conscious, can speak to me, just curled up as a ball, the side of the worst department in the hospital. Everybody around is in vegetative state. It's not an easy place to be in. And the doctors asked me, can you do something? And I said, I don't know what I can do, but I know one thing. We cannot leave her like this. So we need to just try to do whatever we can.
How can you work with someone who's physically so debilitated? They cannot do poses. They cannot truly move their body in a way you would advise them to.
So the props. I can get her into poses that maybe physically she wouldn't be able to hold on her own, but if she's held in it, she could. And slowly, very gradually, as I told you before, the body learns and creates new pathways. And that's what happened to her. Slowly, I was able to disconnect her for sporadic timing from the machine and bring her back. And slowly I could increase the timings. And because I'm in a hospital facility, I can go with the nurse to the yoga room and check that what we are doing is actually improving her breath and the saturation of gases in her breath. Because
not stretching it too far that it might do harm.
They wanted to make sure, but as the nurse was there, she was like, keep going, it's getting better, keep going. So you have this opportunity to also affirm that what we are doing is actually carrying the wished results. So we're not guessing anywhere along the line, and we also know how to make the medical team feel very comfortable with every step we take. Because we know how to explain it, we know how to measure it, we know how to show it.
How does it come together with, you're not a doctor.
No.
You never claim to have the medical knowledge.
No.
Yet you are working so closely with very severe medical conditions. So it's a constant conversation between what you understand about the body and how it works with what doctors understand about the body.
There's 2 parts to this answer. I'll start from the start. Okay, so first of all, when I came into the hospital, even though I was lacking confidence in what I could do for the patients, and I was very skeptical, as many of your viewers are, and I actually, there is a level of doubt that is healthy. So maintaining that. When I came into the hospital the first time, I had conditions. I didn't want to be this weird girl behind closed doors coming from India. Nobody knows what I'm doing. I wanted the medical team to know exactly what I was doing. And also from my own experience as a patient, if the caregivers are burned out, I would feel uncomfortable asking for help because I don't want to burden them. Okay? So I felt that they need yoga for themselves, first of all, because they're completely burned out. And I wanted them to know what I do, so it's not weird things happening behind closed doors.
Right. It's not the magician behind
exactly
the curtain doing whatever magic.
Exactly.
So you would even offer it to them
So
for
my
their own benefit,
condition
but
was-
also to ultimately help the cooperation with them.
So my condition was, if you want me to come and treat the patients, I will do that happily, only if I teach the medical staff. So the medical staff, very early on, had a very clear idea of what I'm doing and what we are capable of doing, because they felt it on themselves. And that was something very important in the level of collaboration and understanding. And
Were they
another thing that I want...
open to learning it?
Not everybody, but slowly, yes. Not in the beginning, not everybody. Again, because I was so skeptical, it's natural for me when somebody is like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, I know. I was surprised too. And it
You were the girl
yeah.
laughing at the whiskey drinker.
Yeah, exactly. That was me. So I really understand it and I get it. And I told you, I'm grateful for the medical team not just taking in anything, because they do have to take responsibility for the process of someone else. And I think it is very important that safety remains above all. But Iyengar Yoga and the medical profession, they share the same values, the same level of professional responsibility, the same level of confidentiality of information, the same level of demanding accuracy in order to ensure the wished result, and many more other things that really connect seamlessly between the medical profession and Iyengar Yoga specifically. And what I also want to mention with that, there is so much more we can do for ourselves than we realize, okay? And when we go to a hospital, we're very busy dealing with the disease. What we are there to do, the Iyengar Yoga teachers, the Anu Yoga teachers that come into a hospital to work, they are there to help the patient with the illness. So I am not in competition with the doctor on their position. I need them to do what they're doing, because that gives me the opportunity to deal with what I'm doing. And together we can deal both with the disease and with the illness.
I was about to ask something along these lines. It's very helpful that you make that distinction, because the way hospitals often work is indeed, it might sound a bit cynical, but they're not so much about the patient's overall well-being. They are about fixing the short-term issues a patient has, or perhaps if the patient has a chronic condition, also the hospitals and doctors often there to manage it, to keep it, to stabilize it in a certain way, but not necessarily having the patient's overall quality of life as their priority. And often hospitals do not have that as their mission. And it surprises me in a good way that the particular hospital that you started working with, they looked at, or that's what it sounds, the patient's quality of life ultimately. And the quality of life focus often happens outside of the hospital. So patients themselves individually, and I'm talking with experience from Hungary and with experience in Belgium, and it might be different in different countries, or it might be cultural, or it might be very local, that a particular hospital has one angle or another. But my experience and with talking with other people was really that if you are truly into improving your own quality of life, that's you. That's on you individually. Outside of the big building, you're going to seek alternative ways. You're going to seek other methods, but it's not up to the hospital or the particular doctor inside the hospital. You could go to individual doctors who have that particular perspective, but it's on you. And it's interesting to hear that particular concern, not more than concern, that particular angle and attitude existed inside the hospital itself, which might be the case maybe for those with physical ailments and the rehabilitation process. But even so, if somebody has a chronic condition, internal medicine or again, neurological or other, it's not necessarily the number one consideration of a hospital to not only stabilize their condition and cope with it, but to truly improve their everyday life. How do you see this?
Oh, I have so much to say. I'm going to start by saying that I think the whole approach to hospitals from patients and doctors is unrealistic, because we have this expectation of fix me. And that doesn't work. That's not realistic. It's a lot of emotional baggage and pressure on a doctor. And it's a lot of hope and despair on a patient to try and search for someone else to fix them. In all honesty, you have better chance of fixing yourself because you have access to yourself 24/7, whereas a doctor can see you once in 6 months for 10 minutes. Having been in touch with a lot of hospitals, doctors, medical professions, physios, you call it kine here, occupational therapists, I can tell you one thing for sure. They would have loved, 80% of them, would have loved to be able to take care of the full picture for a patient. But it's not how the medical system is built. It's built for quantity, right?
Quantity as in?
Quantity of patients. So you cannot hold everybody for a long time in rehabilitation because you need to keep the mood, you only have an X amount of beds.
Which from an ethical perspective is also justifiable because the access to healthcare should be available to the largest number of people. But then you individually may not necessarily benefit from that approach.
But then I'll give you an example of a case that I worked with. Showed up with no muscles in his legs after an injury in the spine, lack of control of his bowel, and really, really, really severely wounded in his spine, compromised quality of life, young man in his early 20s. He showed up, he completed his official rehabilitation timing after 9 months, which is considered quite long, okay? But the muscles in his legs reappeared only 3 years into the process that we continued to work together because he stopped all the rest because the system stopped. But we make sure that we continue to do also longer processes. So he continued with me the longer process. He was not able to walk. He can run now. So if we wouldn't give him that, if he wouldn't give himself, really, that's him, he did it. He chose. If he wouldn't give himself that time span for the body to find a new pathway and really be persistent on it and not give up no matter what, he would still be in bed. And he's a thriving, successful, smart family man, lawyer, lives a full life. So sometimes the body needs a longer period of time. And yoga is for that. It's for the little bit longer process. It's for the chronic condition. It's for to complete what the doctor is trying to do, to enhance the rehabilitation process, to make it more efficient, sometimes to make it much more faster. It can benefit with controlling side effects of medications. It can help with absorption. So there are many different ways in which Iyengar Yoga can support a patient or a process. Yeah, and even though the hospitals are not crazy about it, we keep a follow-up clinic that is open for long term.
The distinction comes to mind between supplement, not substitute. That's what you do. You add to it because it's a complementary approach, and complementary doesn't mean
otherwise the
instead
picture
of.
is tilted and you won't get the wished results. And you are, as a country, you're better off with people knowing how to take care of themselves. you have no idea how much it affects. When somebody can take care of themselves and get the reins back in their hands, because with trauma, sometimes they feel they lost control over everything, lost control over their life, lost control over their bowels. Yeah, it's like it's a very difficult state of being. And suddenly to receive the reins back of independence, of controlling and driving your own life is a huge thing. And imagine what it does to the family, to the children, to the wife, having, just think of the ripple effect of that on the whole system. It's huge. Not to mention inner peace, which in these days, let's do another conversation about that. Violence and war that we are surrounded by.
How much depends on the patient or client or the person you're helping? How much depends on their own attitude? Because it's a double-edged sword. You cannot save someone against their will.
That's true.
You can take, I don't know if it's an English saying as well, but it's definitely a French saying that you can take a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And how do you overcome the point where you have certain tools, you have all those approaches and proven methods, but if the patient is not into it, is not, the word cooperating is not the right one here. They actively need to be part of this. They need to want to heal. So how do you overcome perhaps their skepticism or their resistance to being helped or being assisted in their healing process?
So first of all, I have a lot of, I can identify with them when they feel skeptical. So that's, I think, a first. And then it's about building the trust, as I shared with you, that happened to me. So let's say a patient shows up with a list of issues, and we define together what is the most important thing to touch to start with. And they see that it works. It's enough. And it usually happens quite fast. It's immediate. It's very difficult to define verbally yoga in a way that people can really understand, but it's very immediate to feel the change that occurs because of yoga. So
I'm also guessing that sometimes you need to hit rock bottom, and you need to be so desperate as a patient or be in a place in your life where you say, to hell with it. Like, I'm going to try.
So now you're touching the root cause of why I feel I need to be in hospitals, which is I feel that crack moment, that crack is where there is so much potential. And that crack in a hospital means that the patient has stopped their lives and they're focused on themselves now for X amount of months, for X amount of weeks. Let's use this time, to give them as many tools as possible so they can help themselves when they go home, because maybe there isn't a hospital near their home. Sometimes there's no clinic or medical services in some areas, in the desert, or, we come across a lot of that. This is the moment that the patient will be willing, or any person would be willing to look at things in a different way, from a different lens. And I think that's a critical moment to be there for them and to show them how much hope and how much they have
in them,
how much they have in them and how much they can influence their process. It's not happening to them. They are participants in this process, and they have control over the results of this process. So for me, I think it's crucial to have it in a hospital. I would say it's very crucial to have it also in schools, but that's my next mission in life.
I understand where you basically, that's the touch point where you can make a massive difference. And you're not coming in with an agenda, and you're not coming in with evangelizing about something. None of that. It's really the cooperative, the synergetic nature of what you contribute to their healing process and their well-being, and what the hospitals do as well. So I think it's an extremely beneficial ultimately to the patients in their
Yes.
healing.
And society in general, I can say from my experience, because a lot of our expansion happens in times of crisis. So in times of crisis, the just physical solutions are not enough. You need more than that.
And by crisis, you mostly mean individual crisis, I guess?
Not necessarily. Also socially. Like, let's say the reason we build Anu Yoga as a non-profit organization to administrate work in different hospitals happened because of the pandemic. The need for support for staff members for burnout effect was skyrocketing. We were getting like requests from all hospitals in Israel to come and build burnout prevention programs for them. And we were receiving a lot of requests from different hospitals to come in and help with all the people on life support machines. Yeah. So suddenly there was this call, and we realized that we can't do it operating from one hospital into another, into another, into another. We had to administratively leave the hospital and continue to work with all the hospitals as an independent entity. And that happened during the pandemic. And we can also go into times of war. What happens in times of war, as we are experiencing in the past 2 years in Israel, times of crisis. I have never thought that yoga will help me with my brain tumor. I never thought that yoga could help other people in worse conditions than mine. I didn't think, and all of these were revelations and surprises to discover how much it helps. Yeah, I didn't think that I could work in a hospital at all environment with yoga. And suddenly I'm receiving phone calls since October 7 of head of department going, now, I need you here now, stat, like now, get here now. I'm like, I don't have a defibrillator. I can't help you, I'm not a doctor. And he was like, no, that's not what I need. I need you to be yoga. I need you to bring that here now to the trauma. So we were receiving the wounded people off the choppers because they were in such level of trauma that they had to receive tools immediately. And trauma, the first 72 hours are very crucial. Can you get the right tools you need in order to face this trauma, to recover, to overcome it in the first 72 hours? And that's to do with the hippocampus and the amygdala, but I don't know if we want to get there.
Yeah. Are there other similar initiatives? So other yoga methods or organizations or others who are really looking at it, how to partner with medical facilities, with hospitals? Or are you the only one that you're aware of?
I think that specifically this way, I think we are the only one to this extent and that much integrated into the system for so many years. I think we're the only one, but there are all kinds of initiatives around the world trying to build not specifically Iyengar Yoga, but other forms of yoga trying to build up what they call yoga therapy. Which they also try to incorporate in different locations. And in Iyengar Yoga, I know there are some trying to make some changes in UK, and some are trying to do some things, but on a smaller scale and maybe not so integrated yet.
What fascinates me, as we already touched on it several times, is how that's so closely working together with hospitals and healthcare facilities. So it's not a recreational yoga studio where you might go to, but it has that focus of those who especially need that particular approach and the understanding how that the last thing you ever want is to get someone into a worse condition or to do any harm, just like the oath, the Hippocratic oath, or do no harm. So it's that close cooperation and integration with the healthcare providers and doctors, and not a standalone thing where you individually might go. And if you have a certain condition, they don't necessarily are aware of it, or they don't necessarily are able to adapt the particular practices or poses, for that matter, that take into consideration your particular condition.
Mm-hmm. And we work seamlessly with the medical teams. As you said, I have to have briefing from the healthcare provider, be it the doctor, the kine, the occupational therapist, the psychologist. I will have all of their inputs and then build a program. And while I'll build the program, there are also moments that I would go and consult. It's a very open pathway that we have with the medical profession and the way we build it.
I'm thoroughly impressed.
And research, of course.
Yeah.
Research is a big thing. We are building up on research, and part of the reason that I'm here in Belgium, I think, is because of we've been presenting for the past 3 years. There's a Forum of Rehabilitation of the EU, and we have been presenting in their conventions, presenting our work, and this year we're going to present in Krakow. We're going to present work we've done with MS patients in Czech Republic. It's actually Gart's.
The multiple sclerosis.
With
patients.
multiple sclerosis. This is actually Gart's research and Martina.
How much are you pitching this, or how much are you called in and being invited?
We are being invited.
Okay.
I never
That's
push.
much better.
I never push. I always wait for a pull, because I don't want to start breaking all the walls and convincing everybody. I rather work with people that have an understanding or have seen our work and got intrigued and build it up from there. So usually it's on a pull. This is how it started also.
And before I ask you to pull a card as our closing ritual, but I still want to ask one question I'm truly, genuinely interested in is, why is yoga so different from other physical activities? Perhaps it could have been also one of the early questions, but why is it different from going for a jog, for working out at the gym, or swimming, or any other activity? Why yoga is so transformational?
Because you can't do it automatically. You have to be very present to do it, unlike jogging, that you can just get used to it and start just doing it almost automatically. And it's not necessarily so repetitive like jogging, so it's different. It requires involvement of all layers of your existence, and it involves all the systems in a very brilliant, smart way that you don't get to in other forms of exercise. You just don't get there. It really runs very deep, all the way to the soul.
And as a closing question, how would you describe your own transformation? And I guess, again, we could dedicate a full episode to the emotional, spiritual part of it. Mm-hmm. And we might, actually. Now that I say it, I think it's worthy to look at that, because we didn't even have time to touch on that, where all the, again, that trajectory you must have gone through was transformational, as much as I perceive it and get it. But if we just focus on a very top level takeaway of this, how would you describe this unbelievable path that you've gone through?
For me to go from being completely dependent and unable, with no future, to take care of myself, to reach a point where my life is completely free to choose to help others. For me, that was the biggest, most significant transformation. Not only can I live my life freely, I can choose and have the capacity to be there for serving others. Before I went to, when I went to meet Iyengar, when I received the request from the hospital, and I was resisting it, and I was telling him, I don't know what I'm doing, and he was like, serving people is helping God. End of discussion. So I go with that.
Amazing. All right. Please, and if you want me to read it out, you let me know. By the way, how is your eyesight now?
It's the same. It was removed from the brain by mistake, so it's gone. But I can tell you one thing very important about this disability. I can see only the good things in life. So I'm happy.
Okay. So if you wanted to read it out, I'm happy to oblige. If you dare to be a bit more selfish, what might you do?
I want to say that I would go and live on an island somewhere, but I wouldn't. I would do the same.
It sounds so replenishing and so rewarding, even for selfish reasons. Yeah. It's so fulfilling what you do.
It's so fulfilling, yeah.
Right? It's so fulfilling.
So fulfilling.
And by the way, it helps
and it's
thousands or hundreds and thousands of people down the line.
I want to fulfill B.K.S. Iyengar's wish to bring Iyengar Yoga to people in need the same way he brought it for me and for so many others, and to make sure that it's a part of the system and available to everyone, just the same way the ocean belongs to everyone.
With that, Toda Rabba.
Toda.